The concrete floor was freezing through her jeans, but Brianna Cross could not bring herself to move from where she sat hunched against the toolbox in her father's garage. Her phone lay shattered beside her, the screen still glowing faintly through the spiderweb of cracks, and she pressed her palms against her eyes as another sob tore through her chest. She had come here because no one ever came to the garage at night. The house was full of people who meant well, who wanted to comfort her, but their sympathy felt suffocating. Her father had collapsed 3 hours ago. The paramedics said it was a massive stroke. He was 62 years old and had spent his entire life building furniture in this very garage. His hands always smelling like wood stain and his laugh always echoing off these walls. Now he was in intensive care, and the doctors were using words like extensive damage and quality of life and decisions. Brianna heard the side door open but did not look up. She assumed it was her younger brother coming to drag her back inside, to tell her that mom needed her, that falling apart was not an option right now. But the footsteps were wrong, heavier and unfamiliar, and they stopped a few feet away from her. "Mind if I sit?" a man's voice asked quietly. She finally raised her head, blinking through tears at the stranger standing in the doorway. He was tall, maybe early 30s, wearing dark jeans and a plain gray sweater that probably cost more than her car payment. His hair was dark and slightly messy, like he had been running his hands through it, and his face held an expression of genuine concern rather than pity. "This is private property," she said, her voice hoarse. "I know, I'm your neighbor, just moved in next door last week." He gestured vaguely toward the fence line. "I saw the ambulance earlier, heard some of what was happening. I came over to see if anyone needed anything, and your brother said you were out here." Brianna wiped her face with her sleeve. "I am fine." "You are sitting on a freezing garage floor crying in the dark," he said gently. "Which is completely allowed, by the way. I just thought you might want some company that does not involve talking." Without waiting for permission, he walked over and lowered himself onto the concrete beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. He leaned back against the workbench, stretching his long legs out in front of him, and simply sat there in silence. Brianna stared at him. "This is really weird." "Is it?" He tilted his head thoughtfully. "I always thought the weird part was when people pretend everything is fine when it clearly is not. This seems pretty normal to me." Despite everything, she felt the corner of her mouth twitch. "Normal people do not sit on garage floors with strangers. Then I guess neither of us is normal." He extended his hand across the space between them. "Nathan Owens." She hesitated, then shook his hand. "Brianna Cross." "Nice to meet you, Brianna, though I wish it was under better circumstances." They sat in silence for several minutes. Brianna found herself oddly grateful for his presence. He was not trying to fix anything or offer empty platitudes. He was just there, solid and real, another human being sharing the cold floor with her. "My dad built that chair," she said finally, pointing to a beautiful oak rocking chair in the corner, "when I was 16. He made one for each of us kids." "He is talented," Nathan said, studying the craftsmanship. "That is beautiful work. He was a carpenter his whole life. Never made much money, but he loved it. He could make anything with his hands." Her voice cracked. "And now they are saying he might never wake up, or if he does, he might not even know who we are." Nathan did not say anything trite like, "I'm sure he'll be fine," or "stay positive." He just nodded slowly. "That is terrifying." The simple acknowledgement made something loosen in her chest. "Everyone keeps telling me to have faith and be strong, and I am so tired of being strong. I just want my dad back." "Then do not be strong right now," Nathan said. "Be whatever you need to be." Brianna pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. "Why are you being so nice to me? You do not even know me. Does that matter? He glanced at her with steady brown eyes. You are going through something terrible. Common decency does not require a previous relationship. They sat together for another 20 minutes. Sometimes Brianna cried. Sometimes she talked about her father, about the furniture he had built, about the way he always sang off-key while he worked. Nathan listened without interrupting, occasionally offering a quiet comment or question. When her brother finally came to get her, saying that her mother wanted the family together, Nathan stood and helped her up from the floor. "Thank you," Brianna said, suddenly feeling awkward. "For sitting with me. That was really kind." "Anytime," Nathan said, and something in his tone suggested he meant it literally. "I mean that. If you need someone to sit on a cold floor with you again, I'm right next door." She managed a small smile and followed her brother back to the house. When she glanced back from the doorway, Nathan was still standing in the garage, watching her go with an expression she could not quite read. Over the next week, Brianna lived in a strange twilight between normal life and crisis. Her father remained in a coma. She took leave from her job as an elementary school art teacher to help her mother navigate insurance paperwork and hospital visits. Her two younger siblings, Marcus and Lisa, tried to help, but they both had their own families and jobs to manage. Most of the responsibility fell on Brianna, who was 28 and single, and had always been the one everyone relied on. She did not see Nathan again until 5 days after their garage encounter. She was in her parents' driveway, unloading groceries from her car at nearly 10 at night, because that was the only time she had been able to get to the store. Her arms were full of bags, and she was trying to unlock the front door with her elbow when someone appeared beside her and took half the bags. "You look like you could use a hand," Nathan said. Brianna was too tired to protest. "Thanks." He followed her inside and helped her set the bags on the kitchen counter. Her mother was already asleep upstairs, exhausted from another long day at the hospital. The house felt too quiet and too full at the same time, packed with memories and absent of the person who had made it a home. "Have you eaten?" Nathan asked, looking at her critically. "I had a granola bar this morning." "That is not eating." He started unpacking the groceries, putting things away with surprising efficiency. "When was the last time you had an actual meal?" Brianna had to think about it. "I do not know." 2 days ago, maybe." Nathan shook his head and pulled out eggs, cheese, and vegetables from the bags. "Sit down. I am making you an omelet." "You do not have to do that, I know. Sit down anyway." She was too tired to argue, so she sank into one of the kitchen chairs and watched as he moved around the unfamiliar kitchen with ease, finding pans and utensils like he had been cooking there for years. Within minutes, the smell of butter and eggs filled the air. "How is your father doing?" Nathan asked as he cooked. "No change. They are saying if he does not wake up in the next few days, the chances of recovery drop significantly." She rubbed her eyes. "We might have to start making decisions about long-term care." "That is brutal." "Yeah." She watched him slide a perfect omelet onto a plate and set it in front of her with a fork. "Thank you. Really. Eat." The omelet was delicious, and she realized as she ate how hungry she actually was. Nathan made himself a sandwich from some of the groceries and sat across from her, eating in comfortable silence. "Why are you doing this?" Brianna asked finally. "You do not know me or my family. Most people would just send a casserole or a card." Nathan considered the question. "I have been where you are. Different circumstances, but I know what it is like when everything falls apart and everyone expects you to hold it together. Sometimes the most helpful thing is someone who does not expect anything from you." "What happened to you?" "Lost my parents in a car accident when I was 25, he said matter-of-factly. "My sister was only 16. I had to figure out how to raise a teenager while dealing with my own grief and managing their estate. It was the hardest thing I have ever done." Brianna set down her fork. "I am so sorry. It was 7 years ago. I have had time to process it, but I remember how lonely it felt, even surrounded by people." He finished his sandwich. "So when I see someone going through something similar, I figure the least I can do is show up. Your sister is lucky to have you. She is in college now. MIT, studying engineering. She is brilliant and stubborn, and I am incredibly proud of her." His face softened when he talked about her. "Raising her was terrifying, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Gave me purpose when I was drowning." They talked for another hour, and Brianna found herself genuinely smiling for the first time in days. Nathan had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, and he seemed genuinely interested in her stories about teaching art to second graders. When she finally walked him to the door, she felt lighter than she had since the ambulance had pulled away. "Thank you for tonight," she said, "and for the other night in the garage. You have been really kind." "Get some sleep," Nathan said, "and if you need anything, I meant what I said. I am right next door." As she watched him walk across the lawn to the house next door, Brianna realized she knew almost nothing about him. She had been so wrapped up in her own crisis that she had not even asked what he did for a living, or why he had moved to this quiet neighborhood. But somehow, those details felt less important than the fact that he had sat with her on a concrete floor and made her an omelet when she was falling apart. Her father woke up 2 days later. The doctors called it remarkable. He was confused and weak, and his speech was slurred, but he knew who everyone was, and he could move his right side. The stroke had affected his left side significantly, and he faced months of physical therapy, but the prognosis was suddenly hopeful instead of devastating. Brianna cried in the hospital bathroom for 20 minutes straight, this time from relief so intense it felt like pain. When she finally emerged, her mother was hugging her siblings in the waiting room, and everyone was laughing and crying at the same time. It felt like they had been holding their breath for a week and could finally exhale. That evening, Brianna walked next door to Nathan's house for the first time. It was a beautiful colonial that had been on the market for over a year before he bought it. She rang the doorbell, suddenly nervous, clutching a bottle of wine she had picked up on the way home from the hospital. Nathan answered the door in jeans and a faded college sweatshirt, looking surprised to see her. "Hey, is everything okay?" "My dad woke up," she said, grinning so wide her face hurt. "He's going to be okay. Well, not okay, but alive and himself, and that is more than we hoped for." "Brianna, that is incredible." His whole face lit up with genuine happiness. "I am so glad." She held up the wine bottle. "I wanted to thank you properly for everything you have done this past week. You did not have to be there for us, but you were, and it meant more than you know." Nathan stepped back and gestured her inside. "Come in. Let me get some glasses." His house was beautifully furnished, but still had the slightly empty feel of a place someone had recently moved into. She followed him into a spacious kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that looked like they had never been used. "Have you cooked anything in here besides that omelet you made at my mom's place?" she asked, looking around. "I have made coffee," Nathan said defensively. "Multiple times," she laughed. "That does not count." He poured them each a glass of wine and led her into the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a large backyard. They sat on a comfortable leather couch, and Brianna curled her feet under her, feeling more relaxed than she had in weeks. "So now that my family is not in crisis mode, I realize I know almost nothing about you," she said. "What do you do for a living?" Nathan took a sip of wine. "I run a company. We manufacture medical equipment." "Like what?" surgical instruments, hospital beds, diagnostic devices. We work with hospitals and clinics all over the country. He said it casually, like it was not a big deal. That sounds important. It is good work. I like knowing that what we make helps people. He shifted the conversation smoothly. What about you? You said you teach art. Second grade at Lincoln Elementary. I have been there for 5 years. She smiled. It is chaotic and messy, and I love every minute of it. There is something amazing about watching a kid discover they can create something beautiful. They talked easily for hours, the conversation flowing from teaching to his sister, to Brianna's childhood, to Nathan's experience building his company. She learned that he had started working for a medical supply company right out of college and had bought it when the owner retired, transforming it from a small regional business into something much larger. He talked about his work with passion but without pretension, more focused on the impact than the success. It was almost midnight when Brianna finally stood to leave. Nathan walked her to the door, and she turned to face him on the porch. I am really glad you moved in next door, she said. Even though we met during the worst week of my life, I am glad I met you. I am glad I met you too, Nathan said softly. His eyes held hers for a long moment, and Brianna felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with stress or grief. She walked home feeling like the world had shifted somehow, like she was seeing colors that had not existed before. Over the next several weeks, as her father progressed through physical therapy and slowly regained his strength, Brianna found herself spending more and more time with Nathan. It started innocently enough. He would come over to help her dad build up strength in his hands by working on small woodworking projects. He brought dinner on nights when her mother was too tired to cook. He sat with Brianna on the back porch and listened when she needed to vent about insurance companies or doctors or her own exhaustion. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. She started going to his house just to hang out, bringing takeout and staying to watch movies. He taught her how to make a proper risotto in his pristine kitchen. She dragged him to a local art fair and made him admit he actually enjoyed looking at paintings. They fell into an easy rhythm, like they had known each other for years instead of weeks. Her mother noticed, of course. That boy from next door is here again, she said one Saturday morning when Nathan showed up with coffee and bagels. She had a knowing smile on her face. We are friends, Mom, Brianna said, trying not to blush. Friends who look at each other like that. Her mother raised an eyebrow. Honey, I have been married for 35 years. I know what attraction looks like. Brianna could not deny that she was attracted to Nathan. It was impossible not to be. He was handsome in a way that seemed effortless, with a quiet confidence that made her feel safe. But more than that, he was kind and thoughtful and genuinely interested in her life. He made her laugh. He showed up when things were hard. He never made her feel like she was too much or not enough, but she also knew that timing mattered. She was still in crisis mode, still helping her father recover, still processing the trauma of almost losing him. And Nathan had been there for all of it, had seen her at her absolute worst. She did not want to mistake gratitude for something deeper, and she did not want to risk the friendship they had built. So she kept her feelings to herself and tried to ignore the way her heart sped up when he smiled at her. 2 months after her father's stroke, Brianna returned to work. It felt strange to step back into her classroom, to be surrounded by 7-year-olds who had no idea that her entire world had nearly collapsed. But it also felt good to have structure again, to focus on something other than medical appointments and therapy sessions. Nathan texted her on her first day back. How is it going? Have the tiny humans staged a rebellion yet? She grinned at her phone during lunch break. They made me welcome back cards. I cried in front of 20 children. Very professional. Sounds like you are nailing it." That evening, she came home to find Nathan in her parents' garage with her father. They had music playing and were working together on refinishing an old desk. Her father's movements were still slow and deliberate, his left hand not quite cooperating, but he was smiling in a way she had not seen since before the stroke. "Look who decided to show up," her father said when he saw her. His speech was still slightly slurred but improving every day. "We have been working without you. I can see that." She walked over and examined their progress. "This looks great, Dad." Nathan caught her eye and smiled, and something in that smile made her stomach flip. She smiled back, feeling like they were sharing a secret. Later, after her father had gone inside to rest, she helped Nathan clean up the garage. They worked in companionable silence, putting away tools and wiping down surfaces. "Thank you for spending time with him," Brianna said. "It means a lot to him, to all of us. I like your dad. He has great stories." Nathan hung up a dustpan on its hook. "Plus he is teaching me woodworking. I think I might actually be getting decent at it." "You are. That desk is going to be beautiful." She paused, gathering courage. "Can I ask you something, always? Why did you really move here?" "This neighborhood is nice, but it is not exactly where I would picture a successful businessman living. No offense." Nathan leaned against the workbench, considering his answer. "After my sister went to college, I realized I had been living my entire life in crisis mode. Everything was about work and taking care of her and building the company. I lived in an apartment downtown that I barely saw because I was always at the office. And then suddenly, she was gone, and I was alone in this life I had built that did not actually make me happy." He looked around the garage at the tools hanging neatly on the walls and the sawdust on the floor. "I wanted something real. A neighborhood where people knew each other. A house with a backyard. A life that was not just about the next deal or the next quarter's earnings. So I started looking at houses in places like this, and when I saw the one next door was for sale, something about it felt right." Brianna's heart squeezed. "That is really brave. A lot of people would just keep doing what they had always done." "Maybe. But I turned 32 and realized I did not want to wake up at 45 and realize I had spent my whole life working and missed everything that actually mattered." He met her eyes. "And then I met you, and I felt like maybe I had made the right choice." The air between them shifted, becoming charged with something electric. Brianna could feel her pulse in her throat. "Nathan," she started, but she did not know how to finish the sentence. He pushed off from the workbench and took a step closer to her. "I know the timing is complicated. I know you have been dealing with a lot, and I do not want to add pressure or make things weird between us. But I need you to know that I am not just being a good neighbor. I spend time with you because I want to, because I think about you constantly, because you are the best part of my day." Brianna's breath caught. "Really, really." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I am falling for you, Brianna. Actually, I think I started falling that first night in the garage, and I understand if this is not the right time or if you do not feel the same way. But I needed to be honest with you." She looked up at him, this man who had shown up during her darkest moment and sat beside her on cold concrete without making it strange. This man who had brought her family meals and helped her father heal and made her laugh when she thought she might never laugh again. This man who looked at her like she was something precious. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "I've been trying not to because everything has been so complicated, but I cannot help it. You make me happy, Nathan. You make me feel like myself again." He smiled, slow and warm, and cupped her face in his hands. "Can I kiss you?" Instead of answering, she rose on her toes and closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then Nathan's arms wrapped around her waist and pulled her closer, and Brianna's hands slid up to his shoulders, and the kiss deepened into something that felt inevitable and right and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks." "Me too," she laughed softly, "though I kept telling myself it was a terrible idea." "Was it?" She kissed him again, softer this time. "No, I think it might be the best idea either of us has ever had." They stood in her father's garage, holding each other as the evening light faded through the windows, and Brianna felt like all the broken pieces of the past 2 months were finally coming together into something whole. Dating Nathan was easy in a way that surprised her. They already knew each other's rhythms, already understood each other's lives. He continued to spend time with her father, and her parents welcomed him into their home like he had always been part of the family. Her siblings liked him immediately, especially when they learned that the neighbor guy who had been helping out was actually Nathan Owens, founder and CEO of Owens Medical Supply, a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "You are dating a millionaire and you did not think to mention it?" Marcus asked her incredulously one Sunday dinner. "It did not seem relevant," Brianna said truthfully. She had actually forgotten about Nathan's money most of the time. He drove a nice but not flashy car, wore normal clothes, and spent his free time in her parents' garage covered in sawdust. The money felt abstract, disconnected from the man she was falling in love with. Nathan squeezed her hand under the table. "I am just a guy who makes medical equipment. The rest is just numbers on paper." But the numbers were not just on paper, Brianna learned as their relationship deepened. Nathan was wealthy in a way that was hard to comprehend. He owned multiple properties, had investments all over the world, and could buy basically anything he wanted without thinking about it. He donated huge amounts to charity, funded scholarships for students who had lost parents, and ran his company with a focus on making quality equipment accessible to underfunded hospitals. He never flaunted it, but the wealth was there in quiet ways. The way he could take a Friday off without worrying about it. The casual mention of flying somewhere for a weekend. The ease with which he bought her father a specialized piece of physical therapy equipment that insurance would not cover. "I cannot accept this," her father said when Nathan brought over the machine. "This costs thousands of dollars." "Consider it payment for the woodworking lessons," Nathan said easily. "Besides, I want you to get better. Selfish reasons. I need you to teach me how to make a proper dovetail joint." Her father had tears in his eyes as he hugged Nathan, and Brianna fell a little more in love with the man who used his wealth to help people without making them feel small. But the money also created complications she had not anticipated. 3 months into their relationship, Nathan asked her to attend a charity gala with him. It was for a children's hospital, and his company was one of the main sponsors. "It is pretty formal," he warned her. "Lots of rich people in expensive clothes pretending to care about things. But the hospital actually does amazing work, and I need to show up." Brianna agreed, then panicked when she realized she owned nothing appropriate for a black tie gala. Her teaching salary covered her bills and not much else. The nicest dress she owned was from her college graduation. She ended up borrowing a dress from Lisa, who worked in sales and had a more extensive wardrobe. It was pretty but not particularly fancy, and Brianna felt desperately out of place the moment they walked into the hotel ballroom. Everyone there looked like they belonged on magazine covers, dripping in jewelry and designer labels. The women were polished in a way Brianna had never been, with perfect hair and makeup, and the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about money. Nathan kept his hand on her back throughout the evening, introducing her to people whose names she recognized from the news. Business owners, philanthropists, local politicians. They all greeted Nathan with the kind of respect reserved for someone important, someone powerful. It was jarring to see him in this context, to realize that this was also part of who he was. "You okay?" Nathan asked during a quiet moment, his eyes searching her face. "Just overwhelmed," she admitted. "This is not my world." "It is not really mine either," he said. "I show up because it is expected, but I would much rather be in jeans in your dad's garage." That helped, but Brianna still felt the weight of the difference between them. She was an elementary school teacher from a working-class family. He was a millionaire CEO who moved in circles she could barely imagine. When they were alone together, those differences disappeared. But here, surrounded by his peers, she felt them acutely. The feeling persisted over the next few weeks. Nathan wanted to take her to nice restaurants, but she felt uncomfortable with the prices. He suggested a weekend trip to his cabin in Colorado, but she could not afford to take the time off work. He bought her gifts that were thoughtful but expensive, and she struggled to reciprocate with her limited budget. "This is not going to work," she said finally, sitting in his living room after turning down his offer to fly her to New York for her birthday. "We are from completely different worlds, Nathan." He set down his coffee mug and turned to face her fully. "What are you talking about? You are a millionaire. I live paycheck to paycheck. You fly across the country on a whim, and I have to budget for gas. You bought my father a $10,000 piece of equipment like it was nothing, and I cannot even afford to buy you a proper birthday present." She felt tears burning her eyes. "I love you, but I do not know how to do this when everything is so unbalanced." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was intense. "Do you think I care about presents? Do you think any of that matters to me?" "It should matter. It matters to me." "Why?" He leaned forward, taking her hands. "Brianna, I have all the money I could ever need. That is not what I want from you. I want you. I want your laugh and your terrible singing in the car and the way you look at the world. I want to come home to someone who cares about my day, not my bank account. I want to build a life with someone real, someone who keeps me grounded. But I cannot give you what you are used to." "I do not want what I am used to." His grip on her hands tightened. "I spent years building wealth and success, and it all felt hollow because I had no one to share it with. And then I met you, sitting on a garage floor crying, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because of what you could give me, but because of who you are." "Nathan, I love you," he said fiercely. "I love that you cry at kids' drawings, and that you cannot cook to save your life, and that you spend your weekends helping your parents instead of shopping or going to spas or whatever the hell people do. I love that you do not care about my money, except when it makes you uncomfortable. I love everything about you, and none of it has anything to do with how much money either of us has." Brianna was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, so much. I am just scared that this difference will always be there, that I will always feel like I am not enough." Nathan pulled her into his lap and wrapped his arms around her tightly. "You are more than enough. You are everything. And if my money makes you uncomfortable, then I will do better about that. We will figure out how to navigate it together. But please do not walk away because you think we are too different. The only thing that matters is that we love each other." She buried her face in his neck and held on, feeling the fear that had been building for weeks finally start to dissolve. He was right. They could figure this out. Love was more important than money, more important than coming from different backgrounds. They just had to be honest with each other and keep choosing each other. "Okay," she whispered. "We will figure it out." "Together," Nathan confirmed, pressing a kiss to her temple. They did figure it out, slowly and with a lot of communication. Nathan became more conscious of not overwhelming her with expensive gestures. Instead of flying to New York, they spent her birthday camping at a state park, cooking hot dogs over a fire and sleeping in a tent. Instead of fancy restaurants, they alternated between cheap takeout and cooking together. He started teaching her about his business, showing her that while he had money, he also worked incredibly hard and carried enormous responsibility. Brianna learned to accept help when it was offered without seeing it as charity. When her car broke down and the repairs would have maxed out her credit card, she let Nathan help her buy a used but reliable replacement. When he invited her on a business trip to San Francisco, she went and saw it as an adventure rather than something that highlighted their financial differences. She started to understand that his wealth was just one aspect of who he was, not the defining feature of their relationship. Her father made a remarkable recovery, regaining most of his mobility and returning to his woodworking with adaptations for his lingering weakness. He and Nathan spent hours in the garage together, building furniture and talking about life. Her father told her once that Nathan reminded him of himself at that age, ambitious and hard-working but fundamentally kind. "He is good for you," her father said. "Not because of his money, but because he sees you, really sees you. That is rare, sweetheart." As spring turned to summer and then fall, Brianna's life found a new normal. She loved her job, loved her family, and loved Nathan with an intensity that sometimes scared her. They talked about the future in vague terms, both wanting the same things but not rushing toward them. Nathan said he had spent enough of his life rushing, and he wanted to savor this. A year after they met, on the anniversary of that night in the garage, Nathan took her back there. Her parents were out for the evening, and he had decorated the space with string lights and candles. Her father's furniture pieces glowed in the soft light, and music played quietly from a speaker. "What is this?" Brianna asked, looking around in wonder. "This is where it all started," Nathan said. He took her hands, his expression serious but warm. "A year ago, I walked into this garage and found you at your lowest point. And somehow, sitting on that cold concrete floor next to you, I knew my life was about to change." "Nathan, let me finish." He squeezed her hands gently. "This year has been the best year of my life. You have made me happier than I knew was possible. You have given me a family, a home, a reason to leave work early. You have shown me what actually matters in life, and it is not money or success or any of the things I thought I wanted. It is this. It is you." He let go of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Brianna's heart stopped. "I know we have not been together that long," Nathan continued, dropping to one knee. "And I know we still have things to figure out. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build furniture with your dad and go camping in terrible weather and come home to you every single day. I want to have kids who we will love and drive crazy. I want to grow old with you, Brianna Cross. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a beautiful ring, simple and elegant with a single diamond that caught the candlelight. It was perfect, not too flashy but clearly chosen with care. Brianna was crying again, but this time from pure joy. "Yes, yes, of course I will marry you." Nathan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like idiots. "I love you so much," she said, looking at the ring on her finger. "This is perfect. You are perfect." "I am definitely not perfect," Nathan said, laughing, "but I am perfect for you." They danced in the garage where they had met, surrounded by the furniture her father had built and the memories they had made. Brianna thought about that terrible night a year ago, sitting on cold concrete, convinced her world was ending. She could never have imagined then that the stranger who sat beside her would become her whole world. They got married 6 months later in her parents' backyard, surrounded by family and friends. It was a small ceremony, exactly what they both wanted. Brianna wore a simple lace dress that her mother had helped her pick out, and Nathan wore a dark gray suit that made his eyes look even warmer. Her father walked her down the aisle they had created between the folding chairs, his steps still slightly careful but steady. He hugged Nathan before giving Brianna's hand to him, tears streaming down both their faces. The reception was casual, with barbecue and beer and a playlist of songs that made everyone dance. Nathan's sister flew in from MIT and spent the evening laughing with Brianna's siblings. Brianna's students had made them cards and drawings that they displayed on a special table. There was nothing fancy about it, but it was perfect. During their first dance, Nathan pulled her close and whispered, "Happy," deliriously. Brianna whispered back, "You." "I've never been happier in my entire life." They honeymooned at his cabin in Colorado, spending a week hiking and reading and making love in the big bed with mountain views. Nathan taught her to fish, though she was terrible at it, and they ended up buying trout from a local market to cook instead. They talked about their future, about the house they would buy together, about the kids they wanted to have, about building a life that mattered. "I want to do more with the company," Nathan said one night as they sat on the cabin porch watching the stars. "Not just make money, but make a real difference. Fund research, provide equipment to underserved areas, create scholarships for medical students." "That sounds amazing," Brianna said, curled against his side. "You should do it. Will you help me? I know teaching is important to you, but maybe you could help with the scholarship program or the community outreach. You are good with people in a way I am not." She tilted her head up to look at him. "I would love that. We could do it together." They returned from their honeymoon ready to start their life together. They bought a house halfway between the neighborhood where they met and Nathan's office. A beautiful craftsman with a big backyard, and a garage where they could continue woodworking together. Brianna kept teaching, but she also started working part-time for the Owens Medical Foundation that Nathan established. Together, they created programs that provided medical equipment to rural hospitals, funded nursing scholarships, and supported families dealing with medical crises. 2 years after they got married, Brianna found out she was pregnant. Nathan cried when she told him, holding her carefully like she was made of glass. They turned one of the bedrooms into a nursery, painting it a soft yellow and filling it with books and toys. Her father built a crib, his hands steadier now, his pride evident in every detail. Their daughter was born on a snowy January morning, tiny and perfect with Nathan's dark hair and Brianna's smile. They named her Caroline Ann, after both their mothers. Nathan was a natural father, patient and gentle, walking the floors at night when Caroline cried and changing diapers without complaint. Brianna watched him with their daughter and fell in love with him all over again. 3 years later, they had a son, Benjamin Marcus, who looked exactly like Nathan and had Brianna's stubborn streak. Their house filled with noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of small children. Caroline started attending the elementary school where Brianna taught, and Nathan adjusted his work schedule so he could be home for dinner every night. Brianna's father loved being a grandfather, spending hours with the kids in his garage teaching them about wood and tools. Her mother babysat regularly, spoiling the children with cookies and stories. Nathan's sister visited often, and the kids adored their Aunt Sarah with her engineering projects and her patient explanations of how things worked. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Brianna back to her parents' garage again. It had become their tradition, returning to where it all started. The space looked different now, full of toys and kid projects alongside the furniture her father built. But the essence was the same. 5 years ago, I sat on this floor with you, Nathan said, pulling her close. You were crying and scared, and your whole world was falling apart, and I thought you were the bravest person I had ever met. I was a mess, Brianna said, laughing. You were brave, Nathan insisted. You let yourself be vulnerable. You let me sit with you. You let me into your life. And everything good that has happened to me since then started in this moment. I love you, Brianna said, kissing him softly. Thank you for sitting with me on that cold floor. Thank you for not making it strange. Thank you for seeing me. Always, Nathan promised. I will always see you. They stood in the garage holding each other as the early evening light filtered through the windows. From the house, they could hear their children playing, their laughter floating across the yard. They could hear her parents talking, her father's voice still slightly affected by the stroke but strong and present. They could hear all the sounds of the life they had built together, a life that had started with a moment of unexpected kindness. Brianna thought about all the ways her life could have gone differently, if Nathan had not moved in next door, if he had not come looking for her that night, if he had not sat beside her without judgment or expectation, if either of them had been too scared to take a chance on love. But he had. They had. And the result was this beautiful, messy, perfect life. What are you thinking? Nathan asked, studying her face. I am thinking that I am the luckiest person in the world, Brianna said honestly. I have you and our kids and our family and this amazing life we built. All because you were kind to a stranger crying in a garage. You were never a stranger, Nathan said. From the first moment, you felt like someone I was supposed to know, like I had been looking for you my whole life and just did not realize it until I found you. They kissed in the soft light, surrounded by memories and promise. Outside, their children called for them, wanting to show them something important, something that could not wait. They pulled apart, laughing, and walked hand in hand back to the house. Years continued to pass in a blur of school plays and business trips, of lazy Sunday mornings and family vacations, of arguments and makeups and the deep, abiding love that came from truly knowing another person. Nathan expanded the foundation, and Brianna eventually left teaching to run it full-time, discovering a passion for nonprofit work that surprised her. Together, they helped thousands of families access medical care they could not otherwise afford. Caroline grew into a thoughtful teenager who loved art like her mother and business like her father. Benjamin was all energy and mischief, keeping them on their toes. They added a third child, another daughter named Emma, who arrived unexpectedly but was immediately adored. The house was never quiet, never boring, always full of life. Brianna's father lived to see all three of his grandchildren grow, his recovery from the stroke a testament to stubbornness and excellent care. He and Nathan finished dozens of furniture projects together, each piece a labor of love. When he finally passed away peacefully at 79, Nathan was one of the pallbearers, tears streaming down his face as he helped carry the man who had become like a second father to him. They grieved together, the whole family, finding comfort in each other and in the memories they had built. Brianna was grateful that her father had lived to see her happy, to know that she was loved and safe and building a good life. At the funeral, she spoke about the furniture he had built, about how each piece was made with care and attention and love. About how that was the legacy he left, not just in wood but in how he had taught them all to live. Nathan held her hand through it all, solid and present, just like he had been from that first night in the garage. As Caroline prepared to leave for college, studying art education like her mother, Brianna found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. She was 53 now, with gray streaks in her hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Nathan was 57, successful and respected, but still the same man who had sat on cold concrete beside a crying stranger. They stood in their own garage one evening, surrounded by projects their family had worked on over the years. A rocking chair Nathan had built with her father before he passed, a bookshelf Caroline had made for her dorm room, a toy car Benjamin had constructed at age 8, crooked but treasured. "You ever think about that night?" Brianna asked, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. "The night we met?" "All the time," Nathan admitted. "It was the most important night of my life. Mine too." She turned to look at him, this man she had loved for over 25 years. "I was sitting in my dad's garage, convinced my world was ending, and you walked in and changed everything." "You changed everything," Nathan corrected. "You taught me what actually matters. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond making money. You made me happier than I ever thought I could be." "We did that together," Brianna said. She kissed him softly, still feeling the flutter in her chest that she had felt on their first kiss. "And we get to keep doing it together for the rest of our lives." "Best decision I ever made," Nathan said, pulling her close. "Sitting down on that concrete floor beside you." "Best decision I ever made was letting you," Brianna agreed. They stood together in the garage, holding each other as the evening light faded, just like they had so many times before. Around them was the evidence of a life well lived, of love shared and children raised and challenges overcome together. From the house, they could hear Emma practicing piano, the notes floating through the air. They could hear Benjamin talking on the phone, his deep voice so much like his father's. They could hear the sounds of home, of family, of everything they had built together. It had started with a simple act of kindness, a stranger sitting beside someone in pain without trying to fix it or make it strange. And from that moment had grown this entire beautiful life, full of love and laughter, and the kind of happiness that comes from truly seeing another person and choosing them every single day. Brianna thought about the scared 28-year-old she had been, sitting on cold concrete, convinced she was drowning. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that everything would be okay, that the man sitting beside her would become her whole world, that the crisis she was living through would eventually become just another part of their story. But she could not go back. She could only move forward, grateful for every moment, every choice, every day she got to spend with the man who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. "Ready to go inside?" Nathan asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Ready," Brianna said. She took his hand, and together they walked back to the house, back to their family, back to the life they had built from a moment of connection in a cold garage so many years ago. It had been more than enough. It had been everything.